So Bill, thank you very much for your time with Real Leaders today.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about this very strange phenomenon I'd heard about, the fact that there's a space treaty that exists that protects space and other planets and other things out there.
We all agreed we won't screw up the moon very much, or
Exactly.
Jupiter, but
now we have this treaty protecting things, but we cannot look after our own planet. We cannot agree on Earth, but we can agree on space.
it's crazy making.
It's crazy.
So you guys, we're here at We Day, and it's a celebration of students, young people who are making a difference, who are doing good acts, and they're the future. You know, climate change deniers, people that don't respect the environment or don't appreciate how important the environment is, not just to our health, but to our economic success. You can't destroy the environment and stay in business. Those people are going to, like me, they're old, and they're going to eventually disappear. So when we're at an event like this, I feel great about the future. I feel optimistic. Young people are going to address these problems and fix it.
Right.
And treaties to protect the environment will be one more thing. It's not all just science. It's politicians, political scientists, international relations people, venture capitalists. Everybody's going to work together and make the world better.
Right. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
You have 16-year-olds like Swedish Greta Thunberg, who is motivating thousands of kids, millions of kids around the world.
Skip
to do
school on a
change.
Friday, yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun,
Pretty
isn't
good.
it? But what about people overthink climate change to a degree, don't they? I mean, there seems to be so much conspiracy theory out there, so much overthinking of the science, what's right and what's wrong, and then you get kids who just kind of cut through all the crap and say, this is what it's about.
Well, they're kids can evaluate evidence like anybody else. I mean, the climate change deniers are funded by the fossil fuel industry. And look, I'm like everybody else. We have benefited greatly from fossil fuels the last couple centuries. But time to change, man. Let's go.
Sure.
Anybody can figure it out. We're putting too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere too fast. That's the problem, the speed. So we want renewable electricity, clean water, and access to the internet for everybody in the world. That's what we want.
Right.
Let's go. Let's get her done.
If you had to think back when you were younger to the age of the children you see here today, what kind of awareness was there around the environment?
Well, so I was at the very first Earth Day,
What year was
1970. So I grew up in the city limits. I grew up in the city of Washington, D.C., and I rode my bicycle to the Washington Monument, locked my bicycle to a flagpole. If you tried that today, security would be all over the place. But they had a stage at big events and talking about pollution in those days. And this was shortly after the infamous event where the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, Ohio, here in the U.S., caught on fire. The river was burning because there was so much petroleum, so many petroleum distillates floating on the water. And this other famous thing where these people died in their sleep from air pollution. Oh man. And so we were worried about pollution. And climate change wasn't really talked about in 1970, but by the middle of 1980, people were becoming aware of it. 1988, Jim Hansen testified in front of the U.S. Congress about climate change, the evidence of climate change. He had been looking at Venus and realized the atmosphere of Venus was causing the surface of Venus to be extraordinarily hot, and whereas on Mars, it's not that, and so on and so on. So the awareness of the importance of the environment to our health has been in my life for years, 50 years. But now we got to get everybody on board. And you guys, the economic opportunities, I'm telling you, if we make renewable electricity, we can change the world. There's enough sunlight, wind energy, tidal energy, geothermal energy to run the whole place if we just get on it. And we're going to innovate. We're going to have better transmission lines, a better electrical grid. We're going to have far less inefficient transportation systems. It's going to be fabulous. Let's go.
I'm looking forward to it.
And if you're out there, young people, a specific problem I want you to solve, along with electrical transmission, is air transportation. We need a new fuel or a new propulsion system. So let's go. Get that done. And by the way, whoever figures this out, you're going to get rich. It's not going to be bad. It's going to be cool.
Awesome. And obviously, it sounds from what you're saying that only once business gets on board and shows that they're making money out of it, that you're going to get real change.
So here in the U.S., we have Iowa. which is it's where you get almost all of the popcorn in the world is grown in Iowa. 25% of their electricity comes from the wind. Right now, competing head to head with natural gas and other fossil fuel sources. So we can do this, competing head to head. Just think about the wind resources off the coast of Sweden. It's really fantastic. Let's go.
So if you look at nuclear, that's got such a massive power behind it in terms of supplying energy to, what is it now, 7.5 billion people on the planet?
France is 80% nuclear. Really? Electricity.
How do you scale up? Naturally?
Well, the trouble with nuclear power, especially here in the United States, is the nuclear industry here has been a little clumsy. How would I say? We had almost had a disaster in 3 Mile Island. This is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the capital of Pennsylvania. In Chernobyl, the thing blew up. Well, those engineers shouldn't have been doing that. Well, they were, and the thing blew up. And then in Fukushima, the cooling system was below ground. It flooded. Oh, God. So the nuclear industry has to do better. And the other thing, it's got to be figured out for political reasons, not even technical reasons, is what to do with the waste. Got to find a place to put the waste or something to do with the waste that the public will accept. So right now, my outlook is let's not shut down any existing nuclear power plants. Keep them going, keep them safe, keep them all revved up. And let's invest in basic research to find out if there is a good place to put the waste and a more compact, less expensive. Right now, nuclear power is the most expensive electricity in the U.S. I mean, okay, that wasn't the way it was sold. Like, it should have been the cheapest. So we'll see what happens. But wind, solar, geothermal, tidal energy, and the nuclear that's going now, we can run the whole place. Let's go.
Could we go back to when you were younger? Was there one particular instance when you suddenly realized that what you're doing now is what you wanted to do with your life?
Well, the moment really was when I was in engineering school. I mean, I was not a kid. I always wanted to be a scientist from before I can remember. 3 years old, probably 4 years old. I was fascinated with bumblebees, with bees. I thought they were amazing. I still think they're amazing.
You didn't become a biologist?
Well, no, because I got into airplanes. I grew up at a time where the space race was a big deal, and I had an excellent physics teacher, and that's where I went into physics. But God, boy, the stuff that's going on in genetics now with CRISPR, clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, that's going to transform farming and human health. It's going to be amazing, especially in the developed world. But the turning point for me was when I was in engineering school and the U.S. abandoned teaching the metric system. It's like, what? And then we had I don't know if you've ever heard of these, the Ford Pinto car and the Chevy Vega. These are just horrible cars. And I was very concerned about the future of the U.S. and technologically. And of course I still am. And we'll see what happens. But I'm a native of the United States. What am I going to do? The United States is the world's third most populous country. What happens here is so important to the world.
Do you think America has lost its moral compass and its high ground when it comes to science?
Well, right now it has, yeah. But what's built into the United States Constitution is change. That's built in. Every 4 years we take a meeting. I paraphrase. And so I think the pendulum is going to swing back hard. When I look at the young people that are becoming legislators and congresspeople in the U.S., they are going to make changes. This thing we have going on now is no one's ever seen anything like it, and it's going to change. And I like to point out that in the U.S. Constitution, which became a model for social democracies around the world, including yours, it mentions the progress of science and useful arts, Article 1, Section 8. It's in there. Right. So I am optimistic about the future. When I'm at WE Day, I'm really optimistic.
Fantastic. And one last question.
Please.
And could you direct us to the camera and pretend that you're speaking to the world's children? Mm-hmm. If there's one thing you can tell them to do that will make a difference, what would that be?
So everything each and every one of us does affects everyone else in the world because we all share the air. We all have the same atmosphere. So there's two things my parents really emphasized to me I hope you'll think about. Every person is responsible for his or her own actions. What you do is under your control. And the other thing is, the goal is to leave the world better than you found it. It's not so easy to do, but it's something to think about every day. So go, people, get out there and let's change the world.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
That's awesome. You're an inspiration. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'm not kidding.